All right, and we are live. We're gonna wait for some people to get in here before we start discussing these trades we got for you guys. We got some trades for the number 3 overall pick. The Houston Rockets were able to, I guess you could say, we lucked into it, Brad.
Did
a couple weeks ago, yeah, we lucked into the number 3 overall pick. Was projected to be picking, I believe, around 9 or 10. Jumped into the top 3. And now we have some options where you can obviously stay and draft at 3, or you can trade down, trade out, whatever. So yeah, we're going to talk about some scenarios of that today. Before we started, Brad, just what are you kind of, I guess, your initial thoughts on, just number 3 overall pick, and kind of what you would do if you're the one making the decisions.
Yeah, so again, the Rockets were projected to get the 9th pick. That was 25% chance that was going to happen, or 50% chance that was going to happen. But they ended up getting that 3rd pick, which was like a 5.2% chance. So again, that opens up a lot of possibilities for the Houston Rockets. A team that's been vocal about looking for veteran help. May that be a Mikal Bridges kind of guy, or potentially just bringing in a guy who has the most kind of potential. Somebody who, as Ime Udoka has said, brings shooting to the table. Versatility across the board, whether it's on offense and defense, and someone who just fits the style of, Ime Udoka basketball. So that's what I've been, looking forward to. I'm looking at a bunch of these young guys coming into the draft. What I would do personally, again, I'm okay with staying at 3. There's some good players there, but what I would do, me personally, I would jump into a Mikal Bridges trade, and I think he fits perfectly with this Rockets young core. I wouldn't move any of the young core members. But I personally will go for a Mikal Bridges trade. But as Kelly Ego said today, that might not even be happening. So, Will and I were going to jump into a possible scenario if Mikal Bridges were to get traded. So I'll kick it back to Will.
Yeah, we can jump into it right now. We have 4 trade scenarios we have cooked up today that we think makes sense for both teams and get both teams kind of what they would want. I do want to preface it. I think Brad touched on it a little bit. I'm not saying that I would do these trades. I'm not saying that the Rockets should. If it was up to me, I think there's a pretty good chance that we just stay at number 3. And right now, the odds favorite to be drafted number 3 overall is Reed Sheppard, and I think he makes a lot of sense for the Houston Rockets. So that's kind of probably where I'm leaning towards right now, is more so keeping the pick and staying at 3. So yeah, I want to make it clear. I'm not saying that we should do these trades, but I think these are trades that could be possible, and I think kind of makes sense for both teams. And so, like Brad said, Mikal we had kind of heard some reports from both the Rockets and the Nets camp that kind of hint that we probably won't be seeing Mikal Bridges move, or at least move to Houston. I think that kind of a trade is kind of tricky. So this is the best we could come up with for a Mikal Bridges to Houston deal, and it's kind of. It probably wouldn't even happen. And what makes the Mikal Bridges trade so tricky is you'd be giving up, like, Brooklyn obviously wants their draft capital back so they can tank. That's what their goal here in trading for Mikal Bridges, to trading him to Houston. But if you're Houston, it's like, when the second you give those picks back to Brooklyn, well, actually, matter of fact, whether you give them back to them or not, they're going to be pretty good, right? They're not going to be a good team for the next 2 to 3 seasons. And so you have to ask yourself, is giving up Dillon Brooks in like 3 top 7-ish picks worth trading for Mikal Bridges? And the answer to that question is probably no, especially because you're going to have to pay him pretty soon. But we know the Rockets have a level of interest in him. Maybe not going to happen anymore. We have Dillon Brooks, the number 3 overall pick, obviously, and the Nets 2026 first-round pick going to Brooklyn in exchange for Mikal Bridges and the Suns first-round pick. And the logic behind that is you can't trade the 2025 first-round pick until draft night, so that one kind of can't go in this trade anyways. We're giving Brooklyn back 2 of their picks. They get a top 3 pick in this year's draft. They're going to get another pick in 2026. Like I said, they can obviously tank that year, get another good pick. Dillon Brooks is somebody who I think they'll probably look to flip to a 3rd team for some more assets. And then the Rocket side of things, you get obviously Mikal Bridges. And then I think the Suns pick is kind of the softener for the fact that you're giving Brooklyn 2 potentially like top 5 picks. So I think that's kind of the softener on that. Brad, what you think about this trade?
Yeah, again, it would be my ideal move. You're moving off of, the logic is you have Mikal Bridges on a 2-year deal. So the window is, what are the Rockets going to do? You have a young core 6, you bring in Mikal, you ideally want to win with those guys on the roster itself. So if that's the case, the Rockets would have to take a huge leap this year. Again, they went from 22 to 41 wins this past season. You'd have to take another leap, hopefully make the playoffs, do really well, 50-plus wins. And then that year where Macau is on that contract year, ideally you want to have that push to contender status. These young guys would be 2 years older than they are now. That would be the time for them to really win. So that would be the goal. I think Ime Udoka could push these guys to another level. That would be the logic with this move. And hopefully, of course, you could re-sign Macau. You don't want to make a move like this, potentially giving away top 5 picks just for a 2-year rental. But the fit with Macau is very good. And, getting back that Phoenix pick, Phoenix, I mean, we'll see what happens with them, but they could be imploding very soon as well. So that pick could have some value as well. But yeah, that would be the logic with this move.
Yeah, I was saying before I go to the next trade, I do want to say once again, I don't think this trade happens. I think Brooklyn would want more of their draft capital back, and I don't think Houston is willing to give up more of the draft capital for just Mikal Bridges. So we just went ahead and just knocked that one out the way right now. I don't think that we'll be seeing Mikal Bridges in Houston. This is the second trade we came up with, though. A little bit more straightforward. I think this one makes a lot of sense for both teams. We have the Chicago Bulls receiving Jock Landale and pick 3 from the Houston Rockets, of course, and then the Houston Rockets receive Alex Caruso and the 11th pick in this year's draft. And the rationale behind this one is maybe you don't like a prospect at number 3 per se, or you think that the guy at 3 just may not necessarily be the right fit for your team. And so Alex Caruso is someone, he's on expiring contract, you're going to re-sign him, but he is one of the most valuable and coveted role players in the entire NBA, and for good reason. He's an amazing defender. He's capable of attacking closeouts, spacing the floor. I think that in an Ime Udoka system, he would really, really thrive in Houston. And I could see them saying they would want Alex Caruso for those reasons. And he's super versatile, can play. He's listed as a guard, but Chicago has played him at the power forward at times. So you can plug and play him in multiple spots. You still get the 11th overall pick in this year's draft, so you can still walk away with one of the talented guys who in the later lottery stages. I'm a pretty big fan of Khalil Ware. I don't know who you like there, Brad, but that's kind of who I would maybe take in that 11 range. But obviously for Chicago, Jock Landale is just salary filler, and I know it says he's on a 3-year contract. It's actually expiring. It's his contract is non-guaranteed, so they could literally get rid of him as soon as they could flip him again this summer, or they can get rid of him at the end of the season. They're obviously heading towards a tank. But the prize for them, obviously, the number 3 overall pick. They get to move up in the draft and take a stab at a Donovan Clingan or Reed's still there. Rob will still be there. So that's kind of the idea for both teams here. What you think, Brad?
I 100% agree. When you make a trade like this, you're moving off the number 3 pick. You want to bring in a good veteran that's going to help this team win now. And Alex Caruso is the definition of that. He fits Ime Udoka style basketball, one of the best defenders in the entire NBA, not just at his position itself, just as a whole. Creates havoc defensively, high steal percentage, really good defender, can shoot the 3 ball really well. It's a perfect plug into this Rockets offense, into that second unit. And that would be the reason to make a move like this. And again, if you're moving back to 11, as you mentioned, well, I personally do like Khalil Ware as well. Really lengthy defender, a lot of potential offensively, even shot 40+% from 3, even though it's on a low volume. He could bring a lot to the table for this Rockets team, even if he's a project or not. There's a lot of potential there. So that would be my logic with this move. Again, you're getting off of, Jock Landale, who has a not guaranteed contract. So that's no issue losing him, especially when you have Steven Adams come in this upcoming year. So yeah, that would be the logic with this one. I think it could be, if I'm the Rockets, I could really be talked into this one. The Bull side of things, if they really have a high upside guy in mind at number 3, it makes sense for them as well. But yeah.
Do you because I know a lot of people are like, one of the reasons why the Donovan Clingan in Houston hasn't really picked up too much steam is because a lot of people don't think he can fit next to Alperen Sengun.
Right.
How do you feel about the Ware fit with Sengun?
The Ware fit with Sengun, that's a good question. When you want to pair 2 bigs together, I think of Minnesota. They have a generational defender in Rudy Gobert. He's got 4 depoys. You have a generational big man shooter in Cat, one of the best 3-point shooters of all time for a big man. So that's why that pairing is able to work. So ideally, you have Sengun, a really good offensive player, not the best defensively, can't necessarily move on the perimeter. Khalil Ware, I need to look more into his speed on the perimeter, but offensively, I think that fit would match. But defensively is the concern here. when it comes to pairing two big men. So I don't know if they can necessarily play at the same time. It would depend on, one, Alperen extending his range to the 3-point line. Then defensively, if Khalil Ware could lock up in range, being like a 4 or 5 kind of guy in the middle of the floor.
I wouldn't start them like together or like play them together for any prolonged stretches of time. But I think you could survive maybe like a 3-4 minute stretch of them overlapping on the court. Because Khalil Ware, at least at the college level, has shown the ability to somewhat space the floor. And I think it's one of the draws of him at the next level is that he's a 7-footer who could, somewhat space the floor. So obviously offensively, if he's spacing, that makes it work. And then defensively, I do think that Khalil Ware has somewhat of ability to roam and weak side rim protect. Like I said, I think where we would run into problems is if we run into like the Dallas Mavericks team, for example, it's in the finals right now that's super duper switch heavy. I think that Luka and Kyrie would just pick apart Şengün and Khalil Ware on the perimeter. So that would be like the real concern with that type of lineup. But like I said, I think it can work in like super duper small spurts. And in those times where that's the overlap. But yeah, that would be the idea behind the Chicago Bulls trade. Hopefully, even if you don't like Khalil Ware, there's other prospects out there in the late lottery kind of tier that the Rockets might be enticed by. We can move on to the next trade, which is to the Portland Trailblazers, where this was pretty simple. We're sending over pick 3 to the Portland Trailblazers, and in return receiving 7 and 14. And once again, this is just like a lot of these trades are honestly just based upon the thought that the Rockets don't like someone at 3. Because if they like someone at 3, they're not trading the pick. No matter, like, it doesn't really matter what you offer, unless you're just going to offer up a super duper haul to move up. And in this kind of draft, I kind of don't think there's a team that's going to do that. This isn't, that we talk about this draft not being the most top heavy. It's kind of it's almost being described like a role player draft. So it would really surprise me if teams are like offering up super duper packages to move up. So I think if like the baseline principle is that if the Rockets like somebody, they're going to keep the pick. So assuming they don't, I could see a scenario where the Rockets trade down to 7 and 14, and basically they pick up 2 guys, right? So now you talk about, instead of maybe drafting Reed Shepherd, what I would do if this was up to me, this trade goes through, I'm looking at like a Dalton Connect around 7. It might be somewhat of a reach for him at 7. Maybe you go, if Rob Dillingham is still on the board, maybe you consider taking him there. I'm a fan of Ron Holland. I know he doesn't necessarily make the most sense in Houston, but that's another guy who I would give a look there too. And then I would see at 14. I would still hope that a Khalil Ware, like a Day'Ron Holmes, is still on the board come 14. But yeah, that would be the idea behind trade. And obviously, if you're Portland, they have what they believe in Scoot Henderson. Obviously, I think they believe pretty a lot in Shaedon Sharpe. I'm not really sure where Anthony Simons fits into that picture, but he's still a really solid young piece for them as well. I could see them once again liking Donovan Clingan and wanting him to be the center of the future next to their backcourt of the future. And this will be their way of receiving that. So what you think, Brad?
Yeah, so for one, the Rockets as a team that already has 6 guys in their young core, I personally would not make this trade. The only, I guess, logical thing to do is if you have a guy you like at 3 that you think could potentially fall to 7, you just get an extra asset with that 14th pick. That would be the logic behind this move. Will mentioned a lot of good players, high upside guys. I think Ron Holland has a ton of upside. Matas has a ton of upside. A lot of guys who personally, I don't know if the Rockets would take at 3. But again, like Connect, he's a knockdown shooter from Tennessee. That could work out really well. You never know. But yeah, logic there again is if that guy at 3 is gonna fall, you got to take him at 7. So yeah, I just can't see the Rockets bringing in 2 more young guys when they have 6. They would have to just try to get as much value as possible to again try to acquire a star in the future. That'd be the only way I see them making this.
I mean, you know what they you could trade down and then like trade out if you like if 14 comes and there's not a guy that you want, you don't want to add more young players to this team, because Brad is right. We are like, if when we add a young player this year, that will be the 7th guy we have who's what, 22 right. and under.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I guess Tari would be 23.
Tari's 23.
So
yeah.
23 and under, right? Mm-hmm. That's a lot of young guys, right? On a 15-man roster, that's a lot of young guys who you want to balance it out with the right amount of veterans to, support them in their development, also to support winning. So bringing in pick 14, that would be an 8th guy, you know. So I could see where Brad's coming from, and like you may not have room for that. That then only leaves room for like 6 vets. So I actually logic there. And like I said, if that's the case, you could just trade out the pick entirely, or you take number 14 and then flip it for future assets, maybe another player or another future draft pick, something like that. But like I said, the idea here is that Portland would get like a Donovan Clingan kind of guy, and then the Rockets would be able to move back, pick up some assets, and reassess from there. And then the last trade we were able to kind of come up with is this one. This one has some different possibilities to it. I'll quickly go over it though. It's Jock Landale and the number 3 overall pick going to Memphis in exchange for Luke Kennard, the number 9 pick, and a 2025 Grizzlies first. And Brad wanted to mention, I'll let Brad talk about the Marcus Smart aspect of it, where you could potentially swap out some pieces and have Marcus Smart in the trade.
Yeah, so this is more so a Memphis trade. They've been in talks for Donovan Clingan at number 3. If they're interested in him, they'd look to move up, from 9 to 3, of course. And I think Kelly also mentioned this trade today on his stream on Twitter. But yeah, Luke Kennard, I'll jump into the Marcus Smart one later. But yeah, Luke Kennard obviously brings another shooter to the Houston Rockets. I've said this, the past 3 seasons, the Rockets have been, worse than, bottom 10 in 3-point shooting. So they obviously are in need of some shooting. So Luke Kennard would be able to help in that way. If they wanted to go another avenue, they also have Marcus Smart, who's on a 2-year contract for $20 million a year. Me personally, I don't know if I would do that, but Marcus Smart won a depoy with Ime Udoka in their lone season together in Boston. The 3-point shooting isn't the best. I think it was sub 34% this past season. May not be at that depoy level still, obviously coming off an injury. But if Ime likes his former guy, that could be something that they're interested in as well. So I wanted to also mention that. But yeah, that's more so the logic with this trade, bringing in some much needed shooting to a team that's been bottom 3 the past 3 seasons, or bringing in a guy that Udoka is obviously familiar with and would fit right in from jump, if he's healthy, of course. But yeah, what about you?
Yeah, so yeah, for me, like I said, this trade is just Memphis, I think, is probably the biggest team that has a lot of rumors attached to Donovan Clingan. They seem to really, really want him. And I think for good reason. I think he makes a lot of sense. They have a hole at the 5. Jaren Jackson is really talented, but he's more of a 4. And so having Donovan Clingan play the 5, having JJJ free roam at the 4, that's a really good defense already. Then you have John Morant, Desmond Bane in the backcourt. Figure out what you're gonna do with that wing spot. That's a really talented team in the Western Conference. So I would understand why they are so enthralled with drafting Donovan Clingan. Like I said, Jock Landale, choose to keep him, choose to flip him, choose to cut him. That's kind of up to the other team. He's really just here for salary filler purposes. On the other side of things, like Brad said, you kind of swap some pieces around and then put Marcus Smart in the deal instead of a Luke Kennard, and it would still kind of make sense for both teams. I do think Memphis would probably prefer to keep Marcus. They did trade for him for a reason. So I think they do kind of want to keep him. But obviously reuniting Ime Udoka with Marcus Smart would be really cool. And like Brad said, we saw that guy win a depoy with Ime. So I think there would be a connection there. The thought process for Luke Kennard, though, the Rockets are in dire need of shooting. That is, like, at least in my opinion, the biggest need for this roster going into next season. We were a top 10 defense this year, and that was with Amin Thompson missing like 20 or something games. Tari Eason missed 60 games. So I think we're going to be one of the better defensive teams in the league next, and knock on wood, if we remain healthy again. So the defense side of things, I think we're kind of solid on. The biggest reason that we weren't able to go further than what we did, in my opinion, is because we were I don't remember off the top of my head where we ranked offensively. Do you remember, Brad, or offensively where we finished the season?
They were bottom 10. I'd have to clarify.
Okay. Yeah, that's kind of what I thought. I figured we were one of the worst offensive teams in the league. And a huge part of that was because we didn't have spacing. Like, if you watch those games, how many times did like Alperen Şengün get like triple teamed in the paint because opposing teams just did not fear our shooters at all? Like that was a consistent theme all season long. So the draw for Luke Kennard would be, you bring in someone who can space the floor, who can kind of movement shoot. Defensively, he is a question mark on that end. And like on an Ime Udoka team that's definitely going to be defensive slanted, that would be a question there. But maybe you sacrifice some of that defense for the offensive punch that we were missing last year. And then obviously at 9, You still get to pick, you know, some of the talented guys like Dalton Connect might still be there at 9. That's a guy who I like. Maybe you like a Cody Williams. You know, maybe I don't know where Stephon Castle goes in this draft, but maybe he's still there. I know there's a lot of people like Stephon Castle to the Rockets, so maybe he's on the board at 9. And then the 2025 first, where this gets kind of controversial, I guess, is what would you do to protect this pick if you were Memphis or if you're Houston? What would you agree to in terms of protections? I talked to some Grizzlies fans, and they want to top 5 protect this pick, and I would be inclined to do so because there's a pretty good chance that it just doesn't convey. I'd imagine that unless they get hurt again, they're going to be one of the better teams in the West. So a top 5 protection probably won't convey. But I talked to some Rockets fans, and they say no, we don't want the protection. We want, if we're going to give up number 3, we want an unprotected first. I see both sides. So, you know, like I said, it gets a little tricky there. But yeah, that kind of like brings me back to the original point that like I kind of don't see any of these trades going through. And not because I think that they're like bad trades. I think that the Rockets are gonna like who they drafted 3. And I think they're gonna stay put. Like I said, the odds favorite right now is Reed Shepherd. He makes a lot of sense on the team from a fit perspective. Like I said, he kind of is what we would want Luke Kennard to be, plus some defensive and some playmaking sides of things, right? So yeah, I that's kind of where I think the Rockets go, number 3 overall pick. What you think, Brad?
Yeah, so me personally, again, I think the Rockets are staying at 3. You know, right now it's looking like, well, I'll say this at first. You know, Sarr, I believe, is going 1. I think Zach goes number 2 to the Wizards. So that puts the Rockets in the category of drafting a guy like Reed Shepherd, who would be my pick if they stay. You know, obviously shot 51.8%, I want to say, at Kentucky.
Good volume, too.
So yeah. So knockdown shooter, high steal percentage, racked up a ton of blocks as well. Versatile, scrappy guy. And, you know, I think he's seamless fit with the Rockets team again, who's bottom 10 3-point shooting the past 3 years. Castle is a guy who's been mentioned a lot. Defensively, you know, I think he would fit perfectly with the Houston Rockets. The fit concern to me is the shooting. It is a project. It's going to take some years for that to come. He's got to work on creating his offense as well. Again, it's a developmental pick if you're going with Castle, but the potential is there if, you know, those aspects he needs to improve on hit. But yeah, the defense would be really, really fun to watch alongside like defenders like, you know, Amin Thompson and Atari Eason, you know, guys like that. But those are the two names I've been hearing the most. I'll speak on Klingon. Again, I don't see the fit working just with Şengün, and I can't pick a guy in the top 3 to play him 13 to 15 minutes a night if Şengün's going to be playing 35, you know, 33, 35 minutes a night. So, yeah, those are the 2 names I've been hearing the most. But, yeah, again, all these trades that we have up here, I personally don't think will happen. My bet would be Reed Shepherd at number 3. And I wanted to answer some of the questions on here. I know he was asking, is that Luke Kennard for pick number 3? Not necessarily. I mean, they go down to 9 and then bring in Luke Kennard and also get him the first round pick. Again, that's not a trade I would do. But yeah, that's what that trade says.
I saw the Brandon Clark thing. I like Brandon Clark. I don't know what his medicals look like per se, but I like Brandon Clark. I would be okay with swapping him for Kennard. He doesn't necessarily fix the spacing issues, but I like him as like a small ball 5 kind of stretch 4 kind of spiel. I did want to bring one last thing to the table, and then we can kind of start wrapping.
Yeah.
I didn't have this trade pulled up because I didn't know if it was like the realism behind this one. But my boy DeAndre hit me yesterday and gave me an idea for a trade where the Hornets give us pick 6 and the 2027 Heat first. I think they got from the Terry Rozier trade in exchange for pick 3. And I'm not gonna lie, like that's a trade. I know we talk about a lot of trades here that we probably wouldn't do. That's a trade that I do heavily consider. If I know the draft order, that I would need to know who is Charlotte trading up to draft, right? So you would assume that's one side. I don't know if it works. A lot of times we're trading number 3 to a team that's going to draft Donovan Clingan. That's kind of the idea. I think a lot of teams really like Donovan Clingan. And Charlotte has Mark Williams, so maybe they don't want to draft Donovan Clingan if they believe a lot in Mark Williams, which I think they do. But assume they want Clingan at 3. Cool. What does Detroit and San Antonio do at 4, and what does Detroit do at 5? That would be my next question, because like Brad said, we know SARS and Rashard are going some combination of 1 and 2. So what does San Antonio do at 4, and what does Detroit do at 5? Topic got hurt today, and that was somebody who I guess he didn't get hurt today. It was announced he was hurt today. I think it's an ACL injury, and that was someone who I think was heavily in consideration to go number 4 to the Spurs. I think it made a lot of sense for him to go there and play point guard next to Wemby. If he's not there at 4, maybe he falls a little bit. Maybe San Antonio thinks about going Reed Sheppard there. And then if I'm Detroit, there's probably no chance I don't draft Reed Sheppard just because of what they need. They need spacing just about almost as bad as we do. I know Montas Buzelis is someone who's marked a lot to go to Detroit. And, you know, maybe he has more upside than Reed. But if I'm Detroit, I want the sure thing. I don't want to roll the dice anymore with kind of the state of their rebuild. So I think that they would take Reed off our hands if San Antonio doesn't. But like I said, maybe San Antonio goes like a Rob Dillingham at 4. Maybe Detroit goes Matas at 5. And if Reed's there at 6, I 1,000% do this trade. Like, no questions asked, would do it. Yeah, so like I said, it depends a lot on how much you think Charlotte would like a Donovan Clingan, and then what would San Antonio and Detroit do at 4 and 5. But so that's why I didn't include it. But yeah, that's kind of how I feel about it. But yeah, that's all my thoughts on this trade. Brad, anything else you want to add to the discussion?
We have a Malcolm Brogdon comment.
Okay.
That was a popular topic last season, and he's making $22.5 million. So, you know, you could package guys like, you know, Jock Landale, maybe Jason Tate or an extra. And then some pick swappage going on there. But again, I don't know if the Rockets are going in that personal direction at this point in time. You know, I'm looking at this team. You know, the starting 5 is obviously solidified. Yeah, Fred, Jalen, you know, Jabari, Dylan, and Alperen Şengün. You know, backup unit. And Will, you tell me otherwise. But, you know, we have Amin Thompson, you know, Cam Whitmore, Tari Eason, and Steven Adams. So that's 9 solidified players. Even if you bring in a guy, you know, like Reed at number 3, I don't know if they're going to open this rotation up, you know, to 10 or how much that 10th guy is going to get. So bringing in a guy like Malcolm Brogdon, he's obviously going to play big minutes. So I'd be curious to see what happens to a guy like Cam Whitmore in that scenario, or even Amin Thompson in that scenario. But yeah.
Also, he's kind of injury prone right now. Yeah, he is. He played. He played 39 games last year.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't really know what his medicals look like exactly, and that would kind of scare me from trading for him, is the fact that he kind of played like we could use some more guards and more guard creation, obviously, and like I was someone who was really big on trading for him at the start of last season. But I think I'd rather just go Reed Sheppard than try to figure out the medicals of a Malcolm Brogdon, and you know, maybe like Malcolm Brogdon like 7. I think I would rather just go Reed in that scenario. But if you could ensure me that Brogdon stayed healthy, I think it's for sure a conversation, because once again, he would fulfill a lot of what the Rockets need next season in terms of like another ball handler, someone who can space the floor, you know, high IQ guy, he plays both ways. So yeah, I don't hate the name at all. It's like I said, it's more so just the medicals, and then you know, he's also getting up there in age now. I don't know. I could see it though. But yeah, like I said, I don't know. That's it for me.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you brought up a good point there. I mean, last 3 years he's played 39 games, 67 the year before, and then 36 the year before that. So you're pretty injury prone. But yeah, if you could ensure that he was staying healthy, then that is a game changer. But yeah, that's it on that topic. Yeah, that's it for this this stream as a whole. You know, we're gonna be back in 2 weeks to discuss more trades. You know, with you guys. Maybe we'll get some changes in media. We'll figure out some more things. But yeah, as of right now, that's pretty much it. Did you have anything else, Will, you want to?
No, that's it. Like I said, I saw somebody join the last second say, "Y'all do this for real." Like I said, we put a precursor that if it was up, I think both me and Brad agreed. If it was up to us, we're keeping the pick and we're drafting at 3. I think we're both kind of locked in on Reed Sheppard. These are just kind of some ideas, kind of like some rough frameworks of what we could see potentially if the Rockets don't like someone at 3 and want to move back or move out of the draft. So yeah, that's what this was. Just kind of exploring some options, trying to stay realistic, of course. And yeah, like I said, we'll be back like 2 weeks now to talk about some trades. I believe with the draft have happened by then. I can't even.
No. So it would be 2 days before, or a week before the draft.
Okay. Okay. So
June 20th.
we'll be back. We'll be back then. Kind of talk about some more ideas. Hopefully, we'll have some more creative outlets then. But yeah, thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see y'all next time.